The Maple Leafs look to remain unbeaten coming out of the Four Nations face-off. They'll take on the New York Rangers. We'll preview the game on today's edition of the Locked On at Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On at Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. I've got a best bet for tonight's Leafs and Rangers game, Dave. You want to hear it?
Let's bring it.
I like Morgan Rielly to go over his shot prop total of 1.5. Okay. Morgan Rielly has quietly started to, it's not even that quiet, to be honest. If you were just watching the game and you're looking at the stat sheet, you'll kind of notice that Rielly's been playing a much better game offensively of late, and he's actually hit that number of 2+ shots in back-to-back games and in 6 of the last 7 games to start November. And it really coincides, Dave, with something that happened right before the Maple Leafs took off on that West Coast road trip. Remember when they were playing real awful out home ice and Morgan Rielly was a shell of himself and not playing well? Something's changed since that game, because since then, in the month of February, he's been on fire. He's been playing terrific hockey of late. And I don't know if you had a chance to listen to Craig Berube do the rounds yesterday, but he basically said that there was a conversation had in Edmonton ahead of that Oiler game, and basically took the reins off of Morgan Rielly. And he was on Overdrive yesterday talking about how he believes that maybe he changed Rielly's game too much, essentially. And we've talked about this, right? We've talked about how Craig Berube, yes, he wants his guys to play defensively, wants to play responsible, but that's not quite Morgan Rielly's game. And it feels like now Craig Berube is allowing Mo to play more his style of an aggressive, offensive, defensive game. And we are seeing little pieces of the old Rielly come alive. So I like for him to get 2+ tonight, but also 2+ shots, that is, tonight. But also, it's really nice to see Morgan Rielly producing and playing at a pretty high level these last few weeks, isn't it?
It's a breath of fresh air because we know it's there. We know the talent's there. And we knew that it was not talent that was the issue. It must be, he's being told you got to take less risk in your game. You got to be more, obviously, defensively reliable, but I mean, that wasn't really happening. That it didn't seem like that plan was working so right with Rielly. He was a lot more conservative with his game, maybe a little gun shy, and when you're trying to be so perfect, you tend to make more mistakes. And I think that's probably what Craig Berube saw and said, "Okay, we gotta reset here."
100%. And it's led to, since that Edmonton game on February 1st, it's led to 2 goals, 6 assists, so 8 points in his last 7 games. And he's averaging over 22 and a half minutes a night. So really nice to see Morgan Rielly starting to produce again. And this team needs it. They need some offense on the back end. He's been able to provide it. A couple of goals. You saw Tanev kicking a goal. You saw Jake McCabe kicking a goal. Perhaps we'll see another defensive goal tonight against the New York Rangers. A very tough team, though. It's a squad that realistically their roster looks a lot better than what's going on paper. So this Rangers team's really difficult for me to assess. I don't know about you, Dave, but when I see the team, I think, man, they should be good. They should be in a playoff spot. But for whatever reason, they haven't been. And it's been a real roller coaster of a season for this club. And I don't know what to make of them right now.
I don't know either. They were viewed, remember all those years ago that they said, okay, be a little patient. We're going through a bit of a retool rebuild.
Yeah.
Then they got good. They made the playoffs. They went on that surprising run to the Eastern Conference Final. So okay, Rebuild's done. Now we're going to try to compete again.
Well, they
And-
signed Panarin like the next year, like the next summer.
They're like, oh yeah, we're just gonna go and give our Temi Panarin the richest contract for a winger in free agency history. And yeah, so then you got a franchise goalie in Igor Shesterkin. I think you got Lafreniere in the
Trade for
draft.
Adam Fox, who becomes a Norris caliber defenseman.
So like things were working, a lot of things were going from their way, and then things have just been going downhill. Chris Jury's threatening to trade a bunch of guys. He gets rid of Jacob Trouba by
captain.
telling him, if you don't waive your no trade clause, we're going to put you on waivers, right? And that led to some turmoil, and players were not exactly thrilled with how Jury's been handling things with the team. And they go out, they get JT Miller, that provide a little bit of a boost. Now Adam Fox is hurt long term. Keandre Miller's kind of a bit banged up. So there's a lot going in New York right now. It's never, you think Toronto has a lot of drama? Nothing ever beats what New York provides.
Well, and then they went ahead and they traded for JT Miller on top of all of that, who there was enough drama with JT Miller, himself, right, when he was in Vancouver. Like, what the hell was going on with him and Pedersen, and what he was kind of a detriment to the team in a way. Now he's played well. He's played really well since he's gone to New York. Actually, you take a look at the numbers. 8 games, he's got 5 goals, 9 points in those 8 games. So JT Miller's fit in very well with the Rangers, although he's day-to-day, and I'm not sure if he's going to end up playing in tonight's game. It's going to be a game-time decision. He was not at practice skating, so, as of now, maybe it looks like he won't. Perhaps he was just resting up, but it could be a night where the Maple Leafs roll into MSG, and there's no Miller, and there's no Adam Fox. So it's a game that's very winnable for Toronto. And look, the Rangers, they're just not having a good team flat out. It hasn't been a good season, I should say. Like 29, 25, and 4. And it's a team that you would expect for their home record to be quite good. It's not. It's basically a 500 record at home. They're 14, 12, and 2 at Madison Square Garden. And look at Toronto coming into tonight's game. They've won, 5 of the last 6 road games, and pretty convincingly too. Like 5-4 in Boston, 5-2 in Chicago, 3-1 in Seattle, 6-3 in Calgary, 4-3 in Edmonton. Like, they've been able to put up some goals. They've been able to score, and things are looking pretty good. The Leafs, they've been some road warriors as of late. After kind of a slow start on the road this season, they're now 16-9-2 out on the road. So I kind of like Toronto's chances in this game, Dave. I do. I think they're favored over on FanDuel. I believe, let me just quickly find out what the exact number is. Yeah, I think -125 over on FanDuel as favorites today. So, we're obviously pulling for them. Why don't we take a quick break? We'll come back. We'll dive into the lineups on both sides. And as we noted earlier, Craig Berube did the round, spoke with the media. Nick Robertson had some words with the media. We'll tell you what they said in pertaining to the upcoming NHL trade deadline. That'll all come up next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game faces off, the NHL action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you missed the opening faceoff or you want to bet on a third period comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting features. It allows me to keep every moment exciting, whether I'm backing for my team to get a late rally or picking a player to score a goal. I never feel like I miss my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com and join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the Locked On Network. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano and David Morassutti with you as we are each and every weekday, Monday through Friday, free and available wherever you get podcasts. You can find the Locked On Leafs show. Please subscribe if you enjoy the content that we're bringing you. We go year round. We don't take time off. We're 5 days a week all the way through the season, and then we drop down to 3 days a week even through the off season. So you get Leafs coverage all season, all year long with the Locked On Leafs podcast. And the Buds back in action after a bit of a lengthy time off, couple of days off for the Maple Leafs. Haven't played since Tuesday. A much needed rest, I would say, especially for guys like Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner.
And William Nylander.
And Bill Nye, the wrist shot guy. Yes.
Who may have hurt his wrist. We don't know for sure, but he's saying he's feeling a lot better. We're not sure what exactly the problem was, but he didn't have his glove on and he was looking towards his hand/wrist area during that overtime. So I would assume that was probably what it was. And so, yeah, they had 3 games in 4 nights coming off of 4 nations.
Yeah.
You could tell that some of the players didn't exactly have their legs and they needed to get their legs back, namely the guys who played in 4 nations.
Yes.
So I think this was kind of the perfect. You played the Bruins and you had kind of a couple of days off to really kind of get back, get a bit of a reset. And now you got 2 games, no Saturday night. We have 2 games this weekend, starting tonight against the Rangers. So and a bit easier, right? You got the Rangers Friday and you got the Penguins on Sunday. So still not, I wouldn't say it's not obviously, no, there's not really ever a slam dunk game, but these are kind of opponents that are the Leafs should win.
They're winnable. Certainly winnable games. Absolutely. These are winnable games, and Toronto's got to continue to win games if they want to stay at top of the Atlantic Division. But yeah, like you mentioned it, like we're looking at a game here where it is perfect timing. The Maple Leafs, not only have they had now 3 days off since their last game, they had maintenance days for Matthews, Marner, Rielly got a maintenance day, McCabe got a maintenance day, Nylander, like they just gave some guys some time off these last couple games after the 3 and 4 nights. And for Marner, Nylander, and Matthews, that the tournament that they played, they didn't get a break, so they gave them kind of their own little schedule break, and then they were off. But it looks like Nylander was at practice today, skating in the morning skate, and was on that second line. So why don't we take a look at what the lineup is expected to look like tonight for the Toronto Maple Leafs? We're looking at a top line. Really, nothing's changed except the 4th line. So you got Nyes, Matthews, and Marner, Holmberg, Tavares, and Nylander. You've got the misfit line of McMahon, Domi, and Robertson, which has been red hot again the last couple of games. Lorentz, Kampf, and then Ryan Reaves checks in. And I think we all know why Revo is checking into this game, Dave.
Yes, you got the delinquent Matt Rempe out there running around trying to take people's heads off. So you need the sheriff in the lineup.
You think we see a Revo Rempe tilt?
Yeah, possible. I don't know. Like the Rangers have really been trying to rein in Rempe a little bit here and not to be such go out there and just be over physical. But I think if you're putting Reeves in the lineup, he's gonna try to ruffle up try to get Rempe going here. I think they did fight the last time they played each other. If I'm not mistaken.
I know they the first time they played each other. I don't know. I don't remember. No, because remember his first fight was against Olivier, wasn't it? Matthew Olivier, and it was like a great tilt. And that was like the only fight he had.
Yeah, that was the only fight he had this year. So I think it was last year. This year they did not fight. So yeah, I mean Reeves hasn't really had a lot of dancing partners willing to tango. Also, he hasn't played a lot lately. So I think this is a good opportunity for him to get back in. And I know that you don't really want to change the winning lineup, but I also don't want the possibility of Matt Rempe thinking he can do what he wants because Reeves is not in the lineup.
Yeah, so we'll see if we get to see that tilt. Defensively, we talked about Chris Tanev, and he was likely to miss the Friday game due to the shoulder injury, which makes him day-to-day. He's officially going to miss, and he'll be out. And it looks like Philip Myers is just going to slot into the Tanev spot. So we'll have McCabe and Myers as a defensive pairing, which remains Rielly and Ekman-Larsson together, and then Benoit and Connor Timmins will be your third pair. Do you like the way that Berube decided to set this up? Just slot Myers in and keep everything else the same?
It's not what I expected.
Would you expect?
I was expecting maybe you reunite Benoit McCabe potentially, but that also means, okay, then you would have OEL with Timmins and then Myers with Rielly. So I can maybe understand that maybe you just get the righty with the righty, you keep McCabe on the left side if that's the preference there. And yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I think there could be a chance where if it's not working, they'll make some adjustments.
Yeah. I'd imagine that it'll be fluid. Like if right away these guys are getting are not in a good spot, I think we'll definitely see some changes here. It sounds like Anthony Stolarz is going to get the start tonight as well. He was the first goalie off the ice at Leafskate tonight, so Anthony Stolarz will start against the New York Rangers, and it's a team that he's probably played a lot, considering he played in Philadelphia for quite some time. So, yeah, he'll face off against a familiar opponent. All right, let's take a look at the Rangers lineup, Dave. What the Maple Leafs will be going up against tonight. So we're looking at Artemi Panarin, Vinny Trocheck, and Alexis Lafreniere as the first line. Kreider, Zibanejad, and Will Cooley on the second line. VC, Carrick, and Riley Smith. Othman, Brodzinski, and then Matt Rempe, the Rempire State Building. That's what you're looking at when you take on the New York Rangers tonight. So JT Miller is a game-time decision, not expected to play tonight. And it kind of, I don't know, for whatever reason, you look at the lineup here and VC, Carrick, Brodzinski, Rempe, not a overly stacked bottom six here with the New York Rangers. Just looks like when you take Miller out of that lineup, there's not a whole lot of depth there, is there?
No, and this has kind of been their problem this year. Is they've I know Carrick they had traded for recently, and it's a lineup that just looks kind of meh. Right, like it doesn't have, you don't have a lot of juice, I guess, in that bottom six. Like, we know VC can be a bottom six producer. Oddman's a draft pick of theirs. He's kind of slowly making his way forward. So
I'm kind of surprised that they got him kicking around on the fourth line. I think they just brought him up.
They just brought him up with Miller out, so injured. So they've kind of just decided, let's just bring these guys. Who's on the third line that they brought up? I'm just trying to think.
Not bad. He maybe Carrick or something, Will Cooley was probably
Will Cooley I think was brought up to the top six. Because I think, and then like to me, I mean, Ottman's a pretty decent prospect of theirs. Like he's not, just some AHL.
No, his first round pick. He like scoring talent. Like I remember, when he was drafted, he was like, one of the better players. I remember watching him at the Canada Games back in the day when he played. He was like really good friends with Shane Wright. They both played on the Don Mills Flyers. I've seen this kid play a lot of times, but he had 12 goals in 27 games prior to the call up in the AHL this year. So, it's not like a crazy amount, but he's a former 50 goal scorer in the OHL. We'll see what he can end up doing at the NHL level, but 16th overall back in 2021, and he'll get an opportunity here in his second game in the NHL, taking on the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm sure, from a kid from Pickering, he's probably really looking forward to playing the Maple Leafs and playing Mitch Marner. Probably going to be a really cool experience for young Brennan Othman. And I'd imagine Igor Shesterkin will get the start tonight. We'll take a look at the D pairings really quickly because, again, without Adam Fox, that's not a very good defensive group there. And also, you take a look at the trade that they made with Jacob Trouba leaving, and it looks even worse. So you got K'Andre Miller and Will Borgen as the top pair. You've got Ryan Lindgren and Urho Vakanainen as your second pair, and then Zach Jones and Braden Schneider as your third pair. Like, this is a defensive group that Toronto should be able to, win battles against. They should be able to get some chances. And if you dive into the underlying numbers, Dave, the Rangers have been quite horrendous, actually, in defensive zone coverage. Like, I was diving into it. I was doing my best bet feature for covers, and they're 30th when it comes to high danger chances given up per 60. I think they're 28th in shots allowed per 60. I think they're 29th in expected goals per 60 minutes against, goals against per 60. So defensively, this team's been an absolute mess. And a big reason for it is, they just don't really have a blue line and a bottom six or no defensive depth, no checking line. It's pretty easy to generate offense against this New York Rangers team. Now, it's tough to beat the goalie, right? Igor Shesterkin's one of the best in the world, but generating offense, that should be something the Leafs should be able to do tonight.
It should, and you think of the Rangers, like Braden Schneider as a third pairing defenseman, like he was supposed to be, one of their crown jewels on that blue line. I know that Will Borgen, they brought him in and they gave him that new deal because they really liked what he was doing for them. But like for me, I just think I see this Rangers team, and did they overestimate how much Igor Shesterkin would be able to, fill in the cracks on this blue line and really bail them out, right? Because we know that he was no miss, franchise goaltender, elite, Vezina guy every year. And maybe the Rangers got caught in we got to pay this guy. We can't lose him. And now when you pay him, right, a lot of money, there's a bit of a trickle-down effect, right? And Jacob Trouba, for as bad as things were going with the Rangers, I think would probably be a better option to be on this Rangers team right now than what some of the guys they have right now. At least, yeah, he may not be the defenseman he was when they first brought him in, but I thought he was still pretty good based on what he could provide. Maybe just a bit overpaid, but when you trade out guys like that, and think about the guys they traded to get JT Miller, right? A lot of their depth guys, a lot of guys that would have been able to fill in.
Filipino, was someone who they were able to kind of move up and down their lineup. So yeah, he's someone who was put into that deal. No, Drew O'Connor came from the other side, I believe. But Victor Mancini is somebody who they probably would have there, over Vakanainen. He was a young defensive prospect that they liked a lot. But so, yeah, they've made some interesting moves, very interesting maneuvers so far this season. And they're paying for it. It has not been a good year for the New York Rangers. We'll see if they can pull out, a playoff worthy season by the end of it. But they're in tough against a team that's rolling right now in the Maple Leafs. They've won 3 in a row coming out of the Four Nations break and looking to make it 4 in a row with a win here against New York tonight. We'll see if they can make it happen. We're looking at a 7:00 puck drop at MSG for all those getting ready to watch the game tonight. All right, Dave, why don't we take a break? We'll come back. What did Nick Robertson have to say about the upcoming trade deadline? Things may be changing for Robertson. We'll get to that and more next on the Locked On Leafs podcast.
Today's show is brought to you by Trade Coffee. If you're like me, your morning has to start off with a good cup of coffee, but myself, it's more of an espresso. But I try to get off. I get tired of the grocery store brands that just weren't cutting it. That's why I turned to Trade. Let me tell you, this coffee is next level. Trade is the #1 specialty marketplace in the U.S., bringing you fresh coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Their experts have tasted thousands of coffees, curating over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you're new to coffee or know exactly what you like, they'll handpick the perfect match for you. That's exactly what I did. I took their quiz, and under a minute, they matched me with a roast that was fresh, smelled pretty good, and tasted even better. And my first bag took no time to get here. And the subscription option makes it so easy. No more last minute grocery store runs or selling for whatever is on the shelf. And if you don't love the first bag, no worries. Trade will replace it for free until they get it just right. Right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners 40% off your first order at drinktrade.com/lockdownnhl. That's drinktrade.com/lockdownnhl for 40% off your first order. Go out and get that coffee.
Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you. It's a game day. Maple Leafs Rangers at MSG should be a great game. Really excited for it tonight. Hopefully, we could see some fireworks. Hopefully, Austin Matthews finds the back of the net. He's been on quite the slump when it comes to scoring. He had that empty netter, last weekend, but outside of that, I think he's gone like 9 games, I want to say, or 11 games, including the Four Nations face-off without a goal at 5-on-5. So that should change. Hopefully that changes tonight against the Rangers. I should add, Dave, and for those who maybe want to place a wager on this on FanDuel, 10 times Austin Matthews has faced off against Igor Shesterkin. How many goals do you think he has in those 10 games?
10 goals.
10 goals. Not quite 10. That'd be very impressive against an Igor Shesterkin. But 7 goals in 10 games is pretty good against Igor. 5 goals in their last 4 meetings.
Yeah, and look, I thought the last game, I thought he was a lot more assertive offensively. I thought he had some great chances to score against Boston. So I think he's getting there. We all know that he was dealing with a little bit of some soreness at the Four Nations, but I do think that it's coming for him. It's just I know it's tough when we're used to him scoring at that historic pace last year. But it hasn't been an easy season for Matthews. He's been dealing with the injuries in and out of the lineup, and I'm sure whatever he's dealing with, he's adjusting how he has to play to accommodate it.
Yeah, and what comes up must come down, and what I'm referring to here is shooting percentage. Last year, his shooting percentage was 18.7. This year, 12.3. So it's, it was 3% higher than his career average last year, and it's 3% lower than his career average this year. So, it's funny how the law of averages always ends up working out. And it's a little unfortunate, obviously, for Leaf fans who are hoping to have another big season out of Austin Matthews, where it seemed like if he didn't get to 50 or 60, it was going to feel like a failed season. But now we're just pushing for 40 at this point for Austin Matthews. Hopefully he can have, another 40-goal season to this point. We'll see. All right. So we got a game tonight, Leafs and Rangers. But yesterday, Craig Berube, with a couple days off, gave him a chance to do the rounds on the radio side. Anything that you heard from him and any of the interviews he did that stuck out to you yesterday?
He was really pumping the tires of this group. He was saying that, it's been a breath. He even used this word, a breath of fresh air to be with this group. And I'm like, you don't usually hear people say that Toronto is a breath of fresh air, right? But I think it's mainly you go from St. Louis, where it's not a terrible team, but they don't have an Austin Matthews. They don't have a Mitch Marner. They don't have players of that caliber I think maybe that's kind of where he's going at, right? He's got that talent level that just wasn't cutting it really in St. Louis anymore. But yeah, and then talking about the work ethic of the team too, because we people talked about it. It's not the most. It's not a team that you really expect to kind of dig in every night. The effort gets questioned, but he hasn't. That wasn't really something he talked about a lot of. So I thought it was kind of refreshing to hear him talk like that about this group specifically.
Well, I'm curious if it made you feel like maybe we won't see as busy of a deadline as maybe we thought. Like, did that alter your opinion on what the Leafs might do at the deadline based on what Berube had to say about the current group?
I think maybe it's also more like him saying, I think this group might be worth doubling down on, because we talked.
So
Right?
you think opposite? You think it might be worth going big buck hunting?
Well, you look at the Eastern Conference this year. It's not like the West, I'll tell you that.
It's open. It's open for business. Anyone can win it.
Like, there's obviously Washington with the season they're having, but I think the Leafs have stacked up pretty good against Washington, right? They did beat them earlier this year in Washington. Yep. So I see this as, new coach in here. Sometimes, okay, let's see how things go. But that's not what he was brought in to do. He was brought in to take this team to that level they haven't been able to get to.
Right.
Right. And I'm sure we've seen it. He's let it be known when he's not happy with the group, he doesn't hold back on it. And maybe that's part of where the growth is, right? Like, they've embraced the messaging. I feel like they have, right? They're a lot more responsible defensively. Against Boston, 3-0, they could have packed it in, right? We've seen them do it, and we've also seen them come back. But it wasn't just the stars that dug in. It was the other guys that dug in to help get this team to win. So things like that, I think, all kind of culminate together to say that this team is, I think I don't see this front office saying, we're not sure if we want to push all the eggs into all the chips forward on this team.
All right, I like it. So you think we're gonna have an aggressive deadline? I hope that's the case, because I think the Leafs deserve it. I mean, they're sitting at the top.
We deserve it, Mike.
They do deserve it. They're sitting atop of the Atlantic Division. Like, what more do you want from them at this point? I would say they're overachieving right now. Like, I don't think anyone, if I would have told you that the Leafs were going to be number one in the Atlantic, by the trade deadline, it's not that it would be inconceivable, but you'd be like, well, I probably wouldn't bet on it happening. Like, if it's happened, sure, I think that'd be awesome, but I wouldn't bet on it. Well, it's happening. So if you were to have bet on it, you would have cashed, assuming they can hold on. Obviously, we still got a full week until the deadline, and we'll be getting into some, big time deadline coverage next week here on the show. So make sure you're subscribed so you can come back next week. And, we'll be talking about what the Leafs have to offer, talking about big time targets. We'll do we'll probably do, our Maple Leafs big board for players to target for them as well. So that's all coming next week. So be prepared for that. One player that I am curious about, and whether or not he will remain a Maple Leaf through the trade deadline, is Nick Robertson. And he came out yesterday, Dave, and spoke with the media, and he's kind of changing his tune on what he wants for himself leading into the trade deadline, isn't he?
He is, and in a way, his play recently has kind of dictated that he's realizing that you got it when you're a playoff team, when you're in the third line, you got to find other ways to be effective. Now, we've seen him go on runs like this before, and then it's kind of like, and then he's back to not producing, right? So you have to be mindful of that. He is a bit of a streaky player, but we also know that this is a player that didn't think he was going to be on this team this year. He probably thought that the team was going to, go forward with his request to be traded, and he was going to be gone. And it still can happen, right? But what I think Nick Robertson's doing is he's buying in. He's doing what he needs to do so that when the time comes, if he's still with the team, at least Craig Berube can at least say that there's a bit of a area for you to follow, right? There's a bit of you've set the standard in a way of how good you can be,
right,
when you do the work, essentially.
Right. And I would look at the last game against Boston and look at it and say, hey man, you're a little rat Like you were in there, you ended up having a goal, you scored a couple goals, you ended up with, a couple shots on net, you were going hard to the net, you pushed the goaltender, started a couple of skirmishes, you were in there, you were getting aggressive, like he was mucking it up, and that's kind of what you want. Be a little pest. Like if at least you can be a pest and get under the skin of the opponent. Sometimes that works too. Throw them off a little bit, and I feel like he did that a little bit in that game against Boston. So again, we'll see. I am curious. I'm not sure. Like if the way he's playing right now, I think he's helping his case, and he's helping the Maple Leafs establish a little bit of trade value, where possibly a team that's looking to, move out some players, they could say, we could take a chance on Nick Robertson, a former, 50 goal scorer in the Ontario Hockey League. Hasn't quite translated, but there's been moments. Can he just unlock that consistency? And a team might want to take that on and give up an asset for it. Or potentially, be used with an additional piece like Robertson and a third to go out and get, I don't know, something else. You know what I mean? Like like Robertson for Luke Shen type of deal potentially to make that work. So we'll see what ends up happening. He did say he wants to stay though. And that's the first time we've heard Nick Robertson say he wants to be here this year after rescinding his trade request. But whether or not the Maple Leafs will be willing to, keep him past and through the trade deadline, I guess remains to be seen. We'll find out in a week's time, Dave. Just 7 days, 1 week until the NHL trade deadline. All right, that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys on Monday. We'll recap the weekend games. We've got the Rangers tonight and the Penguins on Sunday.
Sunday afternoon at 1:00.
Yes.
Just know it's not a Sunday night game.
Yes. So Sunday afternoon at 1:00. Enjoy a free Saturday off for Leaf fans. Rare Saturday off for the Buds. So enjoy it, everybody. All right, that'll do it for us here today. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.